talking. Fewer reading, opinions get loud, but the page still speaks. Back to the page.
Hey, what's up, family? Welcome to the stream here. We want to show, or at least give our appreciation for you jumping on each and every week that you do take time out of your busy schedule to jump on with us. Look here, my name is Rodney, and this is Back to the Page. This is where we talk about everyday topics without any opinions. We go strictly by what the Bible says. I know that in today's society, we love to talk about things, love to hear what people have to say. But this is where we just, it's unfiltered. However, we are respectful, I hope, where there's no kind of confusion that can bleed over into along with our explanation of these particular topics. Like I said, we talk about everything, anything. If the Bible talks about it, we are going to talk about it. If we are faced with it in any portion of our lives, then we can always talk about it here to come together and see exactly what the Bible has to say about it. So I wanted, again, what's up, y'all? Soul Guardian, Jax, Lisa, E, appreciate all y'all. All right. And like we do of course, we have a discussion. Of course, we have a topic. But if you want to jump in with your questions, with your comments, I'm going to be looking at them to see what you have to say. And we do want to answer any question you have, or if you want to have something random that you want to talk about, if it's not too random, we'll try to talk about it too. So this is where we like to go with the flow. We like to remain flexible, as it were. So to continue with our discussion from the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about communication. Think well, speak well, lead well. Because ultimately, we all are leaders. We all have our circle of influence. So we want to be able to communicate, to tell people about the gospel in an effective and efficient kind of way. So we talk to people every day. In some way or another, you're going to be communicating with someone. So our effort or our hope is that we could just not communicate well by sharing the gospel. That's number one. But we also want to communicate well on our jobs, in our schools, among our friends, so we can cut down on some of the nonsense. So last week, we covered three particular categories. We talked about reactive communication. Somebody comes up to you and asks, how's your day? Your immediate response is pretty good. How was yours? That's reactive communication. That's when you don't even have to think about what to say. It's automatic. And then we talked about that intentional communication. Intentional communication is when you actually have to ask yourself, what am I trying to say? What message am I trying to get delivered? What's my main critical point? Also, what's the clearest kind of way to express it to this individual? That's when your active communication really slows down. And then you get to the third level of communication, that's strategic communication. That's not only where you are thinking, but you are thinking about who exactly it is you're talking to. You're bringing them into the conversation. Who am I talking to? What do they already understand about what I'm talking about or the message I'm trying to relay? How are they going to interpret, or how might they interpret what I'm saying? What objections might they have? So it's a deeper level of conversation, and it's one that requires a little bit more strategy to it. Now, that was last week. You may have missed a page, so let's get back to the page. I like that. You may have missed a page, so let's get back to. I see what you did there. I see. So this week, let's see here. One of the things that kind of struck me when thinking about this biblically, back to the page, the source. So when you think about this biblically, one of the things in the gospel that is very clear is how Jesus himself dealt with enormous ideas. The kingdom of God. He talked about faith. He talked about salvation. He talked about judgment. He talked about forgiveness. He talked about love. He talked about the relationship with God. You can't get any more deep or any more complex than that. So when talking about any of those things, a regular person would have probably literally a trillion words that they want to say about those things. They have to probably cram in a billion illustrations just to get their point across. And then they have to go even further and use these deep theological, philosophical phrases and terms and words, these complex things, in order to get their idea across. But when you go back to the page, to the scripture, and look at what Jesus did and the language Jesus often used, it was very different. He talked about a mustard seed. He talked about salt. He used light. He talked about a shepherd and a farmer scattering seed. He talked about birds and flowers. He used these very, very, very common illustrations that anybody in that time would have immediately understood. So when Jesus communicated this kind of this truth, this profound truth, he did so through ordinary things, ordinary words that people could understand. Because if the person he was communicating to couldn't understand the words he decided to use, then what was the point of him having a main point at all? If he's using these huge words that the common hearer had no clue what it meant, then that was just another barrier in him trying to communicate his message. So clarity is not the enemy of depth. We want depth to be deep. But we also sometimes think that clarity is kind of, if it's too clear, then it's not deep. We think that sounding complicated makes us sound intelligent, but it doesn't. So in place of using probably the biggest word that we might know, use a simpler one instead and move on. So in your everyday communication, I know a lot of the times we get caught up with wanting to sound intelligent, sound smart. So we want to use big words, a large vocabulary, extended vocabulary. But it's okay just to use the simple ones. It's okay to simplify this thing down, especially if you're in a room with someone. You don't have to say a lot to say a lot. Come on, little bruh. All right. You don't have to say a lot to say a lot. So especially when we're talking to people who may not come from the same area you do, you got to consider them, because the strategic level of communication is not just what is my message, what am I trying to convey. That's that second level. That's where it's focusing on you. But the strategic level of communication is where it's focusing on the person or persons you're trying to reach. So it's okay, and as Christians, it's okay to use simple words. And that is Clarity is our objective. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29 says this. Do not, don't do it. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only allow, okay, only allow what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, not yours, but theirs, that it may benefit them, not you. So our communication should be built on building others up and not merely stroking our own egos. How does that sound? So it's not about how it makes you look. It's about what they understand. So there's another problem. Have you ever been in a situation where you've known exactly what you wanted to say? You knew exactly what you wanted to say until it was time to actually say it. Imagine you were going into a meeting and you had to do some sort of talk or presentation. Now, I'm not talking about going into something that you haven't prepared for. I'm not talking about going into something that you didn't study the material or you did not know the material. I'm talking about something that you knew, you studied, you understood, you studied the numbers, you looked at every angle. You may have even gone through the presentation 10 times or so. You knew it very, very well. You sat in your car for about half an hour before the thing, and you went through in your head every single word, phrase, thought. You knew it. Got into the room. Everybody turns their faces and chairs toward you. You stand up in front of everybody. Your mouth gets dry. Your mind goes absolutely blank. When I say blank, I mean you can't even remember the first word you're supposed to say. Hi, my name is. You can't even remember that part. Your mind goes blank. Good morning. What I'd like to say is, what I'm proposing is all of that preparation goes out the window. Right then, right there. And suddenly, things you've said 100 times before, can't even remember the first word. Start wondering if everybody can tell how nervous you are. Start thinking about, what are they going to say? How are they going to respond to this? You start looking at the faces even closer. Now, does this mean that you weren't necessarily prepared? No. Something else is happening in your body. Your mind showed up, but your body showed up too. And that body is where the problem was. So, what's happening? What happened? What happened when you jumped in front of that room, thought you had it made, and just went blank? Sometimes you don't even have to go fully blank. Sometimes you may be answering a question. Someone asks you something, and you just can't come up with a good response. You know the material, but you just can't come up. It just doesn't seem to be right there at the tip of the tongue. Why is that? Well, as human beings, y'all, we're all human. We have these biological systems, and they are designed to respond to threats, any threat. Sometimes presentation just isn't enough. Experience fills in the gaps. Experience does fill in some gaps, a lot of gaps. The more you do it, the better you become. Experience is important. But even the most experienced person can hit a brick. can get in front of the room and this very same thing happens. Why? Because every one of us gets hit with this biological response. Now, the more experience you have, the better familiar you are with it, and the better able you are to counter it. But everybody gets hit with it. So these systems in our body, biological, that's designed to respond to threat. When something feels threatening to you, the nervous system becomes more active. You get these releases of adrenaline and cortisol, and all of these chemicals in your body starts to release when you feel threatened. Now, honestly, that's extremely useful if you're threatened by a lion that's about to chase you. Adrenaline and cortisol, that works perfectly for you in that situation. I need to get up and hit the bricks and run. But if you see a wild lion, then that's good. But nobody in that room is threatening to eat you alive. So it doesn't quite help in these kind of situations. But the same reaction that you would feel or get in response to a wild lion showing up right in front of you is the same reaction your body gives you when you are up in front of a room for the very first time. Strangers looking at you. That feels threatening to you. Why? Your reputation matters to you. Your job may matter to you if that's in front of who you're in front of. Your opinions of your classmates matter to you. And sometimes in the moment, all of these things do feel life or death. They aren't. But in the moment, what your friends have to think about you or have to say about you, it's very important to you in that moment. So sometimes it is a matter of life and death. You know, those moments are very, very, very strange, especially the younger you are. They feel bigger than they actually are a lot of the times. So what people say or have to say, all of these things feel much bigger in the moment than they actually are. So your body is treating them as a threat. Your breathing's going to change. You're going to start to sweat. Your mouth becomes dry. All of these things are happening as your body experiences this threat that's right in front of you. So under enough stress, some of the mental abilities that you so heavily depend on, well, attention, a working memory, for instance, even retrieving the very next thought, under stress, under that threat response, your mental abilities become less efficient. They work in kind of a hyperdrive. They go overboard. They go just chaos. Neurons, hidden neurons. I mean, just chaos. And that's why something happens the minute you leave that meeting or that room. You leave the meeting and 5 minutes later, you're walking down the hall and you say, oh yeah, I should have said this. That's what I should have said. You're in the car driving home. Doggone it. That's the perfect response. I should have said that. Where was that brilliant answer 10 minutes ago? Well, it was there. You didn't all of a sudden become smart. You were already smart. But what happened was you were overcome by the threat, by the nerves, by the chemical releases. Now, here's what happens. because that happens all the time. The threat never leaves. Okay. Now, I've been speaking in front of people for years. That threat that you feel, it never, ever leaves. I think I remember saying one time, a long time ago, that if you're getting up to preach or teach and you don't feel any kind of nerves at all, then you should question yourself then. Because you should always feel some sort of edge, something. Now, what experience as a teacher does is it uses those emotions, uses the stress release. It uses it. And I think next week, probably next week, I can't remember when, we get specifically in to how to turn the threat into something that you can use, because the stress, the feeling, the emotions, they're going to be there, but it's a way that you use all of that, turn it from nerves into excitement. All right, we'll talk about that. Not tonight, but coming up later. I'm looking at the time already. I think I'm just going to say this and we'll be done. So, in terms of preparation, I wanted to hit on this because I did say that you have studied, you looked at your material, and you know exactly what you should have said, but you got in front of the room and you went blank. Nerves, know what it is. Adrenaline, all that stuff, we know what it is. We know what happened. It was a threat. You thought a lion was going to attack you, but it wasn't. So that's what it was. So what do and how do you prepare? Because some people think that in order to be fully prepared, you have to have everything memorized. You have to know exactly what it is you're going to say. Exactly. Line by line, sentence by sentence. But that is probably the worst way you can prepare. Suppose you memorize sentence A, sentence B, sentence C, sentence D. You got everything memorized. Get up in front of the crowd. You have not a complete blank, but a moment where you weren't able to turn that threat into, or nervousness into excitement. You started out good, but somewhere in there, a moment hit you where you looked at someone and they had a funny look on their face, like they weren't enjoying the talk, or they thought you were stupid, or had this strange look on, and you focused in on it a second too long. And before you know it, you forgot where you were. So if you forgot where you were, you don't know where you're going. You don't know what that next sentence is. So instead of sentences, and this is what our communication exercise, one of the things it's trying to do. Instead of us, and while I'm here, let me mention that again so you know exactly what I'm talking about. We're in the second week of a 14-day challenge, or whatever you want to call it, where we are reading for 15 minutes a day, talking about or writing about what we read about, and then talking about the next day what we read the day before. One of the things this is going to help us with is letting us know that we don't have to remember every detail of what we read in order to communicate it. So instead of memorizing sentence by sentence by sentence by sentence, instead of memorizing every detail, every single detail, everything, which works well if you have a PowerPoint presentation. But if not, you want to memorize the central idea. What is the central idea of your entire message? If everyone left and they can only remember one thing, what would that one thing be? And after that, you want to have 2 or 3 supporting ideas or supporting points. My main idea is this, and these are the points that I want to follow up and hit it with. So as we read 15 minutes and we're trying to remember what we should recall the next day in order to talk about, never going to remember everything you read 15 minutes. But in that 15 minutes worth of reading, what's the point? What's the message? And then 2, 3 support points. And if you have the message and the support, you can hit point 1.1, point 2, point 3, all in order, all good, without forgetting. Okay. So that's it for tonight. Appreciate you jumping on. Next week, Lord willing, we're going to get into how to use those nerves. Nerves are good if you can harness that energy and reuse it and apply it in a different way. Okay. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me. This is Rodney LaBruce. We are back to the page. We're talking about communication, how we can better and more efficiently communicate whatever it is we have to communicate in front of the people we need to communicate it to. So next week, come ready, come prepared. Ask your questions, jump on with your comments. Let's see. That happens a lot as well. You know what I'm talking about, huh? All right. All right, Jay. I appreciate you, man. All right, y'all. Until next week, I'm not going to prolong the time. That's all I got. Love you. I appreciate you. And I'll holler. Wait, let me try that again. Love you. Appreciate you. I'll holler.
We don't build our faith on personalities. We don't build it on popularity. We don't build it on tradition alone. We build it on the word. So keep asking, keep searching, keep reading. Don't just believe it. Open the page. I'll see you next time. Back to the page.